Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to News in Focus. We thought we had ended today's edition of the show, but events that had happened this afternoon in Doha, in Qatar, compelled us to extend the show. This comes after the Israeli military had admitted that they had targeted the leadership of Hamas. This, in many, would be seen as an assassination attempt. Tuesday's attack is the first by Israel in Qatar, who is playing the mediator role in the ceasefire talks to end the genocide in Gaza. It is also home to the region's largest United States military base, the Udeid Air Base. This comes as Israel continues bombing Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, as well as attacks in the occupied West Bank. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome Jeenah, who is the director of the Afro-Middle East Centre, to react and, of course, break down what we have seen today. Naeem, always good having you on. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Naeem, just your initial reaction to what we have seen earlier this afternoon.
Well, I guess Qatar has now joined the list of about 6 or so other countries that Israel has attacked in the past few months, or has been continually attacking over the past couple of years. The latest was Tunisia yesterday. The shocking thing about this, or shocking things about it, one is that Qatar is host to the largest American base in the region, just outside of Doha. And one wonders, what the Americans would do if any other country attacked a place so close to their military base. The second issue is that that Qatar is a mediator in the whole question around Gaza between Israel and Hamas. When you attack the country that is mediating in your conflict, you just seem to be either psychotic or completely showing a complete disregard for any norms, standards, values, international law, etc. And thirdly, that they specifically attacked this building where there was a meeting taking place in order to discuss the latest ceasefire proposal submitted by Donald Trump, which was on Sunday night. The leadership of Hamas was meeting in that building at that time to have this discussion. And so the prospect of a ceasefire was on the table being discussed when they were bombed. Clearly, the impression one would get is that Israel is trying its damnedest to ensure that there is no ceasefire. It's trying its damnedest to wage a war against everyone that it possibly can, including Qatar, which is frankly not an enemy to Israel. It has relations with Israel, and as I said, is a mediator in this instance, and is an indication, therefore, that Israel is at a stage where it is able to act with complete impunity, believes that it can act with complete impunity, do whatever it likes to whomever it likes, because it has no equal. There's a complete kind of Israeli exceptionalism at play here, and so it can attack Syria, it can attack Lebanon, it can attack Iran, Tunisia, Qatar, whoever it likes. One wonders, who's next? Will Turkey be attacked since it has now declared a trade embargo on Israel? And also that we know that there are Hamas people based there. Will South Africa be attacked? Because we know that that there have been Hamas people moving in and out of South Africa on official visits or other visits. So this is a very scary moment, not just for Palestinians or Qataris, but really for the whole world.
Naeem, when Ismail Haniyeh was murdered last year in Iran, of course, there were negotiations that were still occurring at the time. And of course, he was really a key influential figure in those negotiations happening to end the genocide in Gaza. When we see the events that has happened today, and even if you look at it from a supposed middle ground perspective, surely Israel, in any way possible, does not want to end this genocide, because if you are going ahead to attack a party to try and negotiate, which is Hamas, in a sovereign land, anyone for that matter can look at this and say, well, really, Israel has no intentions at all to want to end this genocide. And added to that, you hear Israel Katz, a member of the government, saying, we want to continue to bomb these high-rise buildings. We are giving you evacuation orders in a very limited time. Israel's got no intention. And that's quite clear, isn't it, Naeem?
No, that's clear. I mean, for the past more than a year now, every time there is a ceasefire proposal on the table coming from the Americans, even coming from the Americans, with the Americans saying that it actually comes from the Israelis, and the Palestinians accept it, Israel walks back. So it does whatever it can in order to ensure that there is no ceasefire agreement that reaches any fruition. It clearly has given up on its captives that are being held in Gaza. But this is not just the pattern with Gaza. Remember that when in June, when Israel attacked Iran, that 12-day attack on Iran, was 2 days after talks had begun between Iran and the US on Iran's nuclear program. So whenever there's talks for peace, in a sense, Israel does whatever it can in order to disrupt that and upset it. But there's also, the issue of what it means for the Israeli government and for the Israeli Prime Minister. I mean, he was due to appear in court yesterday. And that was postponed because of the shooting in Jerusalem. And then he was due to appear, or he did appear in court today and then left because of a serious security issue. And that was this attack in Qatar. And the last time he was in court when there was the attack on Iran, and he left the court. So, there's also these kinds of personal agendas at play to ensure that he doesn't see his day in court, that his government remains in place, and will survive, despite the kind of protests on the streets, etc. But clearly, the Israeli government at the moment has no intention of ending the genocide, even though they know that the supposed aims that they've set for this attack on Gaza have not been met and will not be met. I mean, the Israeli occupation forces senior leadership has made it clear that these objectives are impossible to meet. Some of them have even said they've lost against Hamas. They've said that it's impossible to occupy Gaza. It's impossible to deploy the 60 to 80,000 troops that the government has called for. Nevertheless, Netanyahu is determined to go on a kind of mission that will persist until it seems every single Palestinian in Gaza is killed, or the Israeli state collapses.
Naeem, I know you're not a politician, and I'm sure you don't want to be one, but I'm going to ask you to maybe put yourself in the Qatari government shoes, the Emir shoes, because this was an attack on a sovereign nation. Israel says, and I'm just reading the statement now from Israel Katz and Benjamin Netanyahu, it's totally justified, the attack. I had a conversation with a former SNDF Lieutenant General, and he specifically stated that according to international law, if a sovereign nation is attacked, they have every right to respond. I don't think Qatar is going to respond. You may agree or disagree with me, Naeem. But Qatar is in a bit of a tight space, aren't they? Because on one side, they've got this ally of theirs, the United States of America, which they share with Israel. But on the other, this was an attack on their nation, a sovereign nation. How does this all play out now?
It's a very difficult one. I mean, the issue about international law is quite clear. There's no need to even go there, except to say that what this displays is the kind of Herrenvolkism, the superior nation kind of theory that Zionists have. They are above everyone else. International law, morality, ethics, etc., does not apply to them. So when Katz and Netanyahu say this is completely justified, they actually believe that. It's justified simply because they say so. There's no other reason that is required. If they believe it's justified, it's justified. If they launch an attack on the United States and they say it's justified, it would be justified. But the question about what Qatar can do, or the place that it's in a very difficult position. I mean, Qatar has cultivated a kind of situation that it believed would protect it against its enemies. It has a United States base in its country, which should afford some degree of protection. It has a Turkish base in its country, which should afford some degree of protection. It has undertaken all of these kinds of mediations. From Darfur to other African states, to Sudan, to Israel and Hamas now, and various others. All of this in order to place itself in a position where it would be politically protected to such an extent that that an attack like this might not take place by anyone. None of that has worked. So what is it able to do? It issued its condemnation in the strongest possible terms already. It will complain to the United States, who will shrug its shoulders. I mean, the US has indicated that they didn't know the attack was to take place. We don't know whether we should believe them or not.
I don't believe the United States because, and I'm sure, I want to get your take on this, because it's very difficult to actually trust the United States under US President Donald Trump right now, given that this is a country that can do, just like Israel, has the ability of intelligence. They've got the CIA. They know these things ahead of time. It becomes difficult to believe the United States in this, does it, Naeem? Because I'm sure that this was given the green light by the US to go ahead and attack. It has to be.
Well, I think the Israelis can do it without the CIA knowing. But the question is, would they do it without informing the White House or the Pentagon? That's, I mean, I agree with you. It's highly unlikely, especially because of that American base. I mean, if one missile went astray and hit the base, American soldiers would get killed. Would Israel risk that? So it's, I would think it's highly unlikely that that they did it without informing the Americans. And if I am wrong and you are wrong, then we should have expected that by now the Americans should have issued some kind of condemnation. Firstly, because of their base. Secondly, because it's an ally, and thirdly, because it's an ally that's also working with them in mediating this issue on Gaza. So they kind of shrug their shoulders and say we didn't know, but how believable that is up for question. It's, I think, very unbelievable. And as you say, with the current U.S. president, he changes his mind. He could change his mind in 2 minutes on something, or lie about it in the next 2 minutes. So what I was saying was that what options are open for the Qataris? They'll complain to the US, who will really do nothing about it, and that's clear that they'll do nothing about it. He'll complain to the UN, and there'll be a debate in the UN Security Council about it, and all 13 members will agree, except the US, which will veto it. And that's about it. He'll complain to the Arab League. They'll complain to the Arab League, which will issue a statement of condemnation. Some Arab states already have. The OIC will issue a statement of none of that means anything. So there'll be no repercussions for Israel. Israel knows that very well, and therefore it did what it did. And as I said, if it gets away with this, which it seems likely that it will, then the only question is who is next. again, as I said, Turkey quite possibly, and that's why Turkey has issued a condemnation about it. But who else? Who else that has someone living there that might be sympathetic to Hamas or whoever that they would target? And the Israelis have already said early this year, late last year already, that they've decided that every Hamas leader or member, as far as they're concerned, is a legitimate target, no matter where they are. They're proving that now.
And to follow up on that, Naeem, they can go anywhere, and I'm speaking about these Hamas leaders, and Israel will attack them. This is exactly what Israel has said, that we will attack any leadership of Hamas, any member of Hamas, wherever they are. You've mentioned the condemnation from these Middle Eastern nations, and of course, most of them coming from the Arab League. Where do they stand now? Because if any member of Hamas goes to whether it's United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Arabia one's quite interesting, Israel, with its intelligence, will go ahead and want to maybe launch an attack, and it would seem justified from their point of view, if we are judging from the statement from Netanyahu and Katz. What happens then, Naeem? If Israel, with its impunity, continues these attacks, surely they will consider attacking any nation, especially that within the Middle East, when there is a Hamas member or leadership in that respective countries.
Well, I mean, with the UAE, I think Hamas leaders would probably be more afraid of the UAE than of the UAE government than the Israeli government. But yes, that also sends that message that that the space for Hamas members, not just leaders, is closed, because now any country in the Middle East would feel that if they host in any way, whether officially or not, any member of Hamas, that there's the threat that they could be attacked. That then closes that. I mean, let's be honest, there isn't much space available, frankly. Hamas leaders were arrested in Saudi Arabia. They would, face worse than that probably in the UAE or Bahrain or many of these other countries. There's a few countries that they could go to and feel before today relatively safe. Algeria, for example, being one of them. But all of these countries will probably have to think twice after this. Algeria is possibly an exception. Iran, of course, would not bar any Hamas people from coming through. Syria, possibly, although the attacks on Syria are increasing. Iraq, but otherwise the space is closing, and I think that is really part of the objective of the Netanyahu government. Let's remember that in Gaza, where this so-called war is supposed to be taking place, they're not only not making any gains against the resistance, they're actually suffering heavy losses.
Yeah.
In every area that they say that they've got full control, they are being attacked. That is the Israelis. The only two areas that they actually are safe is the Philadelphia corridor in the south and that other corridor where they're not getting attacked. But everywhere else they're getting attacked, and they're losing people. Their own statistics from the Israeli occupation forces, 2 weeks ago, that they have killed in Gaza 8,300 odd Qassam fighters. Now, if we consider the lower number, the number of total people killed in Gaza by the Gaza Health Ministry of about 64,000, then you're looking at the number of fighters killed is about 17%, 83% being civilians. But if you look at other studies that suggest that about 400,000 people or more have been killed in Gaza thus far in the past 2 years, then the number of fighters killed is like 2%. Which means that the Israelis are really losing quite badly in Gaza. And so what do? They spread out and target Hamas people elsewhere because they have nothing to show for their efforts in Gaza except a genocide.
We got 2 minutes left, Naeem. Obviously, the ceasefire negotiations, when you read the Hamas statements, they were willing to accept the terms from the United States negotiators. After today, it becomes very difficult to go back and sit on that very same table with the Israeli delegation to try and complete the ceasefire. This still happens when there's starvation. The genocide is going from bad to worse. What happens next, Naeem? Because it really, again, becomes difficult to go ahead and try and complete the ceasefire so that aid can get into Gaza. And of course, some sort of reconstruction can begin there.
So, before Sunday, Hamas had accepted the proposal that was put forward by Witkoff
Yes.
a few weeks or a couple of months ago, which Israel then didn't accept. So this is the American proposal. Then on Sunday night, Trump gave them another proposal, which we assume is even more compromising of the Palestinian position than the Witkoff one was. Now, the Witkoff one meant, accepting that meant that Hamas, on behalf of the resistance in Gaza, had made substantial compromises. They were considering now a proposal that we assume would cause them to make even more compromises. In the midst of that discussion that they're having, to be bombed in this way, I can't see that Hamas would now go back to to accepting any kind of proposal with any sense of dignity, frankly, after being attacked in this kind of way. I also don't see Qatar being willing to continue being a mediator in this. And so, in a sense, the Israelis probably got out of this attack what they wanted. No more ceasefire talks, no more negotiations, and the law of the jungle prevails.
Naeem, always good having you on. Shukran so much for making time for us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That is Naeem Jeenah, director of the Afro-Middle East Centre. Another major hurdle in trying to get that ceasefire done to end the suffering for the people of Gaza. Israel has made sure that suffering continues. That's all we have for you here on this extended version of News in Focus from myself, for Hospital, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.